AJ, does that mean that if I'm really desiring truth, that it will enter my soul instantaneously when it's delivered?
Yes. Yes. Now, of course, the probability of that occurring while we have so many emotions of error to release, and this is where there is a symbiotic relationship between truth and humility, is highly unlikely if we have no humility that truth can enter us under any circumstance. We have to be open to its entering us. So, and the only way we can be open for truth to enter us is to have error leave us at the same time that truth enters us. And that is an emotional process. The error leaving us has to leave with an emotion, and therefore the truth can enter us at that moment. So if we were always open to feeling our own emotions, being humble, can you see we would also probably be very open to receiving truth. And once we receive the truth wouldn't be just an intellectual thought, something that we could intellectually and logically digest, but rather it will enter us as an emotional condition inside of our soul. The truth will enter us as an emotional condition inside of our soul. Can I illustrate how this occurs with some of the addictions that we might face? Many of you have said to me or have said to others that you're passionately on the divine love path, which let's call it, we're passionately on the way to God, to our relationship with God. And at the same time, you are aware of physical addictions that you retain and enjoy retaining. So, for example, some of you, the physical addiction might be like cigarette smoking, for example. And I'll give that as an example. Please understand, for those of you who are still smoking, I'm not picking on you specifically, just using an example. So let's say I'm passionately longing and desiring God's truth in this matter, and I am smoking, and I realise intellectually, again, it must be only an intellectual realisation because I'm still smoking, I realise that smoking is bad for my body and it demonstrates a lack of self-love because I'm harming my body with something that if I didn't have it, my body may live a lot longer. And in fact, seems to be, and definitely is documentary evidence at this point, that your body might live 10 to 20 years longer by not smoking compared to smoking. So I know there's some issue of love involved. Now, if I am having a longing desire for God's truth on that matter, I would realise that the addiction prevents a lot of things from happening. While I'm engaging the addiction, I am never going to have a love of myself. Can you see that? I'm engaging the addiction because I'm masking or covering over a feeling that I don't love myself. And it's as a result of that, and it's evident because I'm slowly committing suicide, really, by smoking. That's what I'm doing. I'm slowly committing suicide. I'm reducing my life expectancy. And so therefore, I must at some level intellectually be aware that this habit or addiction is not good for me. But I continue doing it. And that tells me that I'm yet to have the truth enter my soul. Because if the truth had entered my soul, I would instantly be unable to smoke one more cigarette. All right? Because of the love issue that it confronts if I do. Because I would be out of harmony with love if I did. So what we need to do is understand that our addictions while we feed them, we are actually denying truth from entering our soul. Now, I'm not just talking about physical addictions here. I'm talking about the addiction that many of you ladies have, for example, that you want a man who you can control and manipulate. That addiction. And I'm talking about, for many of the men here, the addiction you have to give to a woman so that you get from them sexually, that addiction. And I'm talking about the addictions we all have generally to not say the truth in what we call delicate situations. That addiction. All of those addictions are addictions that we are feeding. Now, I put to you that while you continue to feed your own addictions, whether they be spiritual, emotional or physical in nature, you are not opening your soul to truth. You're not letting the truth enter you, because the layer of addiction is the error that we were staying in and want to stay in still. And since that's not entering us anymore, what is happening is that we have no openness to divine love coming into our soul and transforming our soul. We have no hope to change. You see, a lot of times we create our own hopelessness by the actions we take. Can you see that? So in other words, we are feeding our addictions frequently, and because we feed the addiction, rather than confronting the addiction, which would be the truthful thing to do, we feed it and it becomes the thing that guides our life now. We are under its control, but unfortunately, because we're under its control, there is no prospect for change. And yet when somebody comes along and tells us, oh, you have this addiction, this emotional addiction, no, I don't. It's like the smoker, while he's having a cigarette, somebody comes along, you're still smoking. No, I'm not. One thing I like about physical addictions is this. At least you can see that you have them. With emotional addictions, you know what happens? Most of the time, we deny their very existence. So we can't see we have them. And the problem with that is if we don't acknowledge the truth of anything, then love cannot flow. We're using our will to block the flow of love. Matthew?
I'm not really sure how anyone else feels, but like number one, great. As soon as we got onto number two, like I'm really struggling to stay awake, and I'm getting a lot of spirit influence now that we're starting to talk about truth, because I feel like that's what spirits in particular don't want us to connect with. Yeah.
This is the problem we have in the world today, is all of us think we want love, and we'll talk about love, and we're open to a discussion about love, fairly well open emotionally. But as soon as I begin speaking of truth, which is the doorway into love, everyone closes the door. Can you feel your own feelings?
That's what I'm wanting to do.
Closing the door to this basic understanding of divine truth. And yet what I'm saying to you is, without divine truth, without God's truth, you have no hope to have your soul ever transformed. And yet, as soon as we start talking about truth even, there's a contraction of our very soul. And we've got to look at why. Can you see? We've got to look at why we are so resistive to hearing the truth all the time. Why is it such a burden for you to hear the truth? Would you like to express why it's such a burden? Deb, thanks, if we're going
to... For me, maybe possibly for others, the only time I heard truth as a child was twice from my father, and twice that I recall, might have been more. I was so totally condemned.
Okay, so usually a parent has condemned.
Like I was in a box that I could never get out of this box. I was just bad.
Or judged you.
Yeah.
So the problem is, oftentimes when I start talking about truth, there's this automatic feeling inside of you that you're going to be judged, or you are being judged as bad, useless, pointless. That is a basic reason why we are resistive to being open to truth. If we go to, is it Monique up there? Yes. Oh, sorry, Renee. Sorry, Renee.
I just feel really hopeless and really powerless, as though I can't change, and just end up giving up.
So we have a belief that I cannot change. And by the way, that is a true belief while you resist God's love. Does that make sense? That's why we have a tendency then to feel it, of course. If we go to Alex.
There is a fear of seeing the level of unlovingness within me.
So third thing, we don't want to see our true condition. Or let's put it this way, a feeling that I cannot face my true condition.
I feel like especially still going through a lot of fear with after the sleep state talk.
Yep.
To see the truth of what's happening there for me.
Yes.
Yep.
Real struggle to feel our true condition.
Yeah.
So the trouble is when we struggle to feel our true condition, we bury our head in the sand, right? Because in denial, because we don't want to actually see or feel our true condition. Does that make sense? Monique? It's just up the back there.
When I see the truth about myself, sometimes I feel so overwhelmed that it's so big that I feel powerless to change anything.
Okay, so there's two issues there really, but let's look at the first one. I feel overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed by the badness. I guess I judge it as well.
Right, see, I wouldn't call it the badness, I'd just call it the emotion within. You know, understand? I feel overwhelmed. We want to talk more about these feelings in a minute because we're going to focus on some of these feelings in the humility section of the talk. But can you see how some feelings are preventing us from even allowing the truth to open the door to love? We're not even getting to the point where we're opening the door to love because we're rigidly holding onto the door, which is truth, not wanting it to open because we're afraid of what we're going to have to feel if it opens. So we don't open it. Right? But we consign ourselves to stagnation. And then we punish ourselves for being stagnant. Does all that make sense to you? Why would we bother that entire process? Why not stop that entire process and start acting differently?